Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Freeing Your Mind podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Dukeman, and this week I have with me Mr. Jay Tiegs. Jay, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing great. So, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. It was good to connect with you last week and have a nice conversation and decide to evolve that conversation into this podcast.
Yeah, I'm
So,
excited to be here to talk about all things trauma, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. So thanks for having me on.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So tell us about yourself, Jay.
Yeah, so I am where to start, man? I got so many things going on. I'm a 27-year veteran of the U.S. Army. I just recently retired back in March, so just a few months ago. So I'm in that transitionary period of finding my way. I've been in the Army since I was 17, and I'm a father of triplet teenage daughters. So I've got three 15-year-olds at home. I'm a high performance coach and leadership trainer, and I also teach at university. So I'm an adjunct professor. And I'm an endurance athlete. I host the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm an avid. I'm just very passionate about helping people achieve a greater life through grit and discipline. And I'm also a 22-0 certified trauma coach. And so I've got a lot of irons in the fire. I do a lot, a little bit a lot. So
Yeah. Yeah, and so that was one of the things we connected on was the 22-0. A few episodes back, I had interviewed Rob Hollingsworth, and he had gone through the 22-0 program to deal with his PTSD, and he was like, I can't really explain it. It worked, and so it was actually neat when we connected, and I found out that you had some experience and knowledge with that. So that was an exciting thing to hopefully let the audience gain some more perspective and knowledge on what that actually is and how it can benefit.
yeah, it's a really, like you said, it's very difficult to explain. It's a form of linguistic programming, a form of NLP. And it's kind of like when you're in the session, you just have to go with the flow of the instruction. But really what's designed to do, what I love about it is we basically kind of go back in time and before the trauma and after the trauma, and we're basically rewriting the script. And what I love about it is you don't have to sit there and lay on a couch and like talk about this horrible thing that happened to you. You don't have to go into any detail to receive really good treatment for it. And
Mm,
I had some traumas myself, and my business partner Dale Walls was certified, and he took me through it. He's a former Marine, and he took me through it, and it made such an incredible impact on me. I'm like, dude, I've got to go get certified in this because I just wanted to add another feather to my coaching cap. And I'm like, there's so
mm.
many people dealing with trauma, especially as a veteran in my community, that I want to be able to take this and help others. And I was able to get in on one of the cohorts last year and get certified. And I'm really excited about it.
Nice, nice. So, what's your story? I mean, you obviously over 2 decades in the military, so you've done some things, seen some things. You've got a lot of irons in the fire right now, which is also pretty impressive going from military to not to have thrown that much on your plate in like I don't know 3 months, four
Yeah.
months. But so what kind of got you into this line of work where you're at now? What about the trauma and the things that you dealt with, and how did that kind of mold and shape, and how did you overcome those things?
Yeah, it's a great question. I came from a broken home. I am a first generation American. My father is German. My mother is Dutch. She's from Holland. My father moved over here right after World War II. And I'm going back in time to kind of paint this story. But my father was a child during World War II, and
Mm,
he had a large family, men and women. All the men went off to go fight. He was roughly around 6 years old at the very beginning of World War II. The women stayed back and basically kind of tended to the family. And like I said, all the uncles and grandfather and everyone, they went off to go fight. Well,
mm,
bottom line is, none of them made it back. And the women, toward the tail end of the war, as they were outside of Berlin, as the Russians were coming in to liberate Berlin, they basically were taking all the families and like moving them to another location to where they'd be safe. well, safe, but it was the Soviets. They were doing all sorts of horrible things to the civilians and the women. Put basically, my father, his sisters, the aunts, all on a truck. My father was sitting in my grandmother's lap at the tail end of the truck. And I don't know a lot of detail, but basically the truck came under fire. My grandmother holding my father fell out of the truck, but everyone else in the truck perished. So he watched his entire family, die essentially in this burning truck. Long story short, they made it back to Berlin, and during the reconstruction, somehow survived all of that. I can't even imagine the trauma that my father faced. But the bottom line is he was jacked up. Like he finally came to the United States. Somehow he came to the United States at 19. He joined the U.S. Army and for 3 years served as a truck driver and a combat engineer, and was able to get his citizenship. And throughout life, I mean, he struggled. He struggled financially. He struggled with his relationships. He met my mother in California, and that was wife number 4. He already had children with other wives. He was abusive. He met my mother. My mother immigrated here not long, early 1950s. My grandparents, they survived World War II, and they wanted to come to the United States and kind of reset their lives. So they brought their 5 children, and one of them was my mother, and they moved to California. Well, somehow my father and mother had met. My mother already had some mental health issues, but she met my father. Things were great initially, but then my father, whatever his antics were, it got physically violent. I was born in there somehow, and he was same, physically violent, emotionally violent with me. Bottom line is I was born in the United States, but immediately after I was born, they had moved back to Germany for about 5 years. And then they brought me back to California when I was 5 years old. Physical, emotional abuse continued. I mean, I have vivid memories of him beating the hell out of my mom and, beating the hell out of me. And it exasperated my mother's mental health issues. And she was ultimately diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar. And his abuse just exasperated all of her symptoms. And she was in and out of the mental hospital. Like all his other relationships, he ran off, found another woman, took me with him because my mother was unable to care for me. And still some physical and some emotional abuse. Ultimately, that relationship didn't work out either. And they adopted me, and I ended up in Missouri, and it wasn't a good situation. So I had a lot of hell and turmoil in my life, but it was due to my father's, trauma. I mean, all of his antics are squarely from his trauma. So long story short, I grow up, I knew that there had to be a better way of living. And so I set my sights on the military. I thought that the military would be a great place for me. I could be around father type figures. I just had to get there. Right. So I ultimately joined the military, and I just closed that dark chapter of my life. And did the best that I could, in service. And I found my way through that. But I had trauma, and I had dysfunction from a tumultuous upbringing. The military was great because I had, you're told where to be, what to do. You've got you can kind of map out your career plan. You do these things and you'll be successful. And for the most part, I did those things well. But I struggled in my relationships. I struggled with my finances. I had a real difficult time with my own confidence. And I feel like I'm kind of a late bloomer when it comes to a lot of just basic, I was dysfunctional in a lot of areas of my life. And it took me a while to become functional. And then, the Army issues you some trauma along the way too. You have some deployments and things like that, back-to-back, deployments to Iraq and whatnot. And bottom line is around, I'd say about 12 years ago, even I had a successful career, my marriage, father of my triplet daughters. I got to a point where I was miserable in my marriage. I was coping poorly with some of my traumas with alcohol and video game addiction, just like escapism. And I was suffering in silence. And I was miserable. And in the military, when I initially came in, you were considered weak if you sought help. So I just kind of suffered. And at that point, I had been enlisted and I'm commissioned as an officer. So I had a lot of, the new when you promote up, new levels, new devils, carried a lot of responsibility. And I was a fantastic soldier on the outside, but inside I was absolutely miserable. And I got to a point where I just the pain was I don't know, the pain was almost too much to bear. And I had a 45, a 1911 Springfield 1911 45. And I just kept thinking about going back down behind my house. There's a nice little stream down there, a little place I had to go down there and think. And I just kept thinking about going down there and just shooting myself. And that thought just kind of kept creeping in my mind over and over and over again. And I got to a point where it's like, okay, I've got to go back and unpack this shit. I can't leave my daughters without a father, because not having a father myself, I just couldn't do that to my daughters. They're the reason that I'm still here.
Mm.
But that pain was overwhelming. And I finally tapped out. I'm like, you know what? I need help. I need help. If I'm going to live here, I need to go get some help. And that's when I decided to seek help. I got myself in therapy. And then I also started studying. I wanted to know why some people were so successful. How could some people, and there's many stories of people that came from nothing. And I felt, I came from nothing. How do some of these people, find their way, and how are they so damn happy?
Yeah.
And so I started studying like just high performing people. So it was a combination of dealing with my own demons and studying positive psychology. And that's how I ultimately, fell into some of the mindset groups. We're both in one of the same groups. I ran into Sean Whalen, and that was one of the first groups that I joined. Fundamentally transformed my life, because I'm like, okay, I got to rewire how I'm thinking about everything, and I got to take ownership of this.
Yeah.
And that was the bottom line. That's the path that was the moment that I just kind of changed the trajectory of my life. I still have my demons. I still deal with stuff, but I feel like I'm in control of it. And the more that I learn and study about these things, the trauma therapy and the coaching is also a form of therapy for myself, because I get a lot of it heals me to help other people, and I'm also on my own journey. So I know that was a long-winded answer.
No, you're good.
But
You're good. Yeah, it's all valid for sure. I mean, the if anyone, I think as far as treatment goes, if anybody tells you that you're gonna be done, like, you may be done with the treatment, but you're always gonna have things that are hard. You're always gonna have those demons, those things that come up. But the difference is, through your treatment program, whatever you're doing, whether it's therapy, whether it's EMDR, psychedelics, doesn't matter. You're just learning how to be the master over those demons. It doesn't mean it's not hard sometimes or challenging, but it's just putting you in the driver's seat and teaching you how to be in control of it. Instead of letting it control you, you can recognize as as the darkness creeps in, be like, oh no, you're gonna stay right there. And I know how to take care of it. I know what I need to do to keep that darkness at bay. And I think that's important, because as you talk about a journey and going on that journey of healing the trauma, and I don't remember exactly what you said, but basically, like, essentially a positive therapy journey, as well as you're studying other people who are successful and happy. You learned not only how to heal yourself, but how to improve yourself. So you're doing this, which is great, because I think that some of the greatest successes from therapy are when you really dive in to heal yourself and really commit to it. Because I spent time just floating through. I was just going through the motions. And it wasn't until I really dug in, it was like, no, I got to get ahead of this. That's when the traction starts happening. You really start to see the growth and personal development and the happiness, where all of a sudden you recognize one day, like, well, I'm happy. And I haven't felt that way in years.
Yeah. That's what I love. In our Constitution, it says the pursuit of happiness, right? Happiness isn't going to fall through the ceiling into your lap. You have to do the work to pursue it. It's like,
absolutely,
you have to take command of your life. And to your point, you can go to therapy and lay on the couch and just answer the questions. They give you the homework and they ask you how it went the next time. Well, I didn't do any of it. Well, you have to do the work that goes along with it, and you have to take ownership of it. And that's just, I think that was what was the light bulb for me. Like I was a commander in the Army, and I could command troops, and I did that well, but I wasn't taking command of my personal life. And when I adopted that same mindset and I leaned into these things, I changed my belief about what therapy was. because anytime that we're struggling with something, it's because we have this strange belief about something.
Mhm.
So I thought my belief was, well, therapy was for, weak people, and I'm a soldier,
Mhm.
and I've overcome a lot of shit in my life, but that's for weak people. Well, when I changed my belief that, uh, therapy is actually a sign of strength,
Yeah.
and it's going to help me be a better leader and be a better father and be a better friend and husband. When I changed my belief, that's when I really started to lean into it. But I had to believe that this was good for me, and that it
Mhm.
wasn't like, oh, I'm embarrassed to talk about it. And then when I started talking openly about it in the military, because there was a big shift even within the military, where I remember the first few times that leaders would come out and say that, hey, I'm in therapy. And you're like, holy shit, it wasn't all that long ago that you were treated
Yes.
accordingly. You were treated weak because of that.
Yep.
And so the belief in the not only for yourself, but the organization that you're in has to change.
Yep.
And when that happened, it was a big switch.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that growth continues to happen, like you said, in that talking about it, being open about it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just don't, and that's okay. I mean, if that's not you, and you're just wanting to fix yourself, and you're good. I mean, you with what you and I do, we've certainly feel called to share that story and to share those things because we want to help people, and we want to see other people not suffer the way that we did, not have to dwell in that dark space. But there is such a therapeutic value from sharing that message, even if and you don't have to do a podcast, you don't have to do it on social media, but even just sharing it with that coworker that you recognize as disconnected or struggling from some event that happened. If you're, whether you're first responder, military, or maybe you just know that something real bad happened to them, and you recognize, like, oh, I remember when I was in that spot. I can see they're acting the same way that I was, and just reach out to them and talk to them about it, because a lot of times it's just those little things that make all the difference in the world, and it's super therapeutic for you because it gives you an opportunity to heal yourself through healing someone else, helping
Yeah.
them on that journey, helping them ignite that fire to heal.
I think people need to know that they're just not alone. Like their
Absolutely.
trauma or what's happened to them is not unique to them. And we live in this world where social media, everyone's putting their best foot forward. So it's just
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't want to let my weakness out. I don't want to show my cards. What if they judge me? What if they have an opinion of me because I was abused or something happened to me? And what I've learned through, the coaching experience and therapy is that, when you talk about it more, people will come up out of the woodwork. They'll pull you aside or they'll send you a message like, hey, I really appreciate that, because that's
Mhm.
me. And what I've realized is we are not alone. And one of the most impactful books for me that really helped me, switch my belief system and my mindset was A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Mhm.
He was a psychologist during World War II, psychologist or psychiatrist, Jewish, lived through 3 death camps, and basically documented, what was it about people that would give up versus
Yeah.
those that would fight. And you want to talk about, you think that your problems are bad. I mean, you just listen. That book is so gripping. The horror that man saw and lived through, like, it just pales into comparison to
Yeah.
anything that I've been through. And it kind of gives you like a reference point, like, okay, if this guy can deal, I can deal, right?
When
But
and
but the
it's so
common,
fascinating. The book itself is so fascinating about how he
yeah,
breaks all that down when he's in the midst of worrying or whether or not he's going to live through this. I mean, it's
yeah,
got to be in the back of his head the whole time. It's a death camp. Like
yeah.
you're only there for so long, and you're hitting the gas chamber or they're shooting you in the head, and he's sitting there studying the others in the camp because that's how his brain works. That's his calling in life, is to observe people. And the fact that he made it through and identified those things, that if you haven't read the book, it is such a fascinating
It's a must read. And I
read.
think if anyone is, I mean, this is a trauma podcast. I think if you're interested in this topic,
Yeah.
that's a must read. Go get that book immediately and get your head wrapped
Yes.
around that. Because, like I said, it really helped me change my belief system, because the one common denominator is that every human on this planet has to go through some level of suffering. We all suffer in some capacity. I don't know a single person that has had this beautifully just perfect life without some form of struggle or challenge.
Mm.
Whatever your belief system is, if there's a higher power, like that just seems to be like we all have a crucible. And you can compare, but it doesn't matter. We're all on an individual journey. And when you can realize that, you know what, challenge and suffering is a part of our existence,
Mm.
then instead of being like on defense about it and trying to hide it, then you can lean into it. And I think it
Yes.
goes back to changing your belief system. Like, this is part of the experience. There's lessons learned in this.
Mm-hmm.
You can be passive and do nothing and let it ruin your life, or you can lean into it, do the work, and live a good life and help other people navigate, their struggles and challenges. And
Absolutely.
that helped me, make that switch.
Yeah, that's all big stuff. It's so true. Um, it's the lean into it and just
Yeah,
embrace it. It doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it, but you're going to learn from it. You're going to grow from it. I
yeah,
mean, just like anybody who's in treatment for any of this stuff right now, they're learning and growing from it.
absolutely. And that
And
journey is not easy. It's not an easy thing
no,
to do.
no, but it's worth it. And the light at the end of the tunnel is so much better than you could have ever imagined.
Yeah,
And it
it's
just
definitely worth it.
come out with the tools that you need to just face the next struggle, which is not necessarily the same or as hard, but it's just you're gonna have a better set of tools to do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's all about. So you got two modalities. You can be very defensive and passive in life, let life happen to you, or you take command of it. And that's what, leaning into the therapy and seeking help and taking ownership of the situation, because that's what you need to do. You need to lead. It's all about leadership. It's leading yourself. And that's what, that's the case for leaning in and doing the trauma. Don't tap out, like lean into it and do the work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did want to ask you on the 22-0. Um, so is that always a single session or
You
is
can
it
do
sometimes
ongoing
multiple?
sessions. Yeah, I think for most people, it's probably multiple sessions, but you can get a lot of work done in one big session. And how do I describe it? It's the trauma resiliency protocol. And it's basically designed to go in and detach the emotions that you have attached to the trauma.
Mm.
And it's a fascinating process. I usually, when I book a call with a client, it's usually 90 minutes, might be 2 hours. Maybe we'll do a follow-up session. We can get a lot of work done in just a couple sessions, but you may have something happen to you a little bit later, and you can come back and I have my friend Dale. He takes me through it when I'm having a challenge, and he kind of runs me through
Mm.
it. But you can get a lot of work done in just a couple sessions.
Nice, nice.
And going back to, like, doing the hard things. This is the this is seriously like one of the easiest things to do in regards to trauma, because you don't have to talk about what had happened to you. I
Mm.
find this fascinating. It's almost like it's almost, I don't know, it's almost too easy, but it works remarkably well. And that's all I can really say about it. You just have to experience a session to understand it. And if you want to go through a session sometime, I can take you through it, so you can
Yeah,
experience
that'd
it.
be
Maybe talk about it again on the podcast. Like what was your experience afterwards, to see how it helped you out. And
yeah.
because like I said, it's very difficult to explain.
Yeah, I'd love to do that and be able to share with the audience
Yeah.
experience on it and hopefully shed some light. I have come just in the last probably year where I've just really taken on, like, if anything, anybody offers an opportunity for something that is going to add that value or healing in my life, even though I feel like I'm in a really good spot. I mean, I started doing breath work last
Mm.
year and had never done it before. And there's a whole slew of benefits, and it's not necessarily just even trauma related. But I found after the first session, I was like, oh wow, like that unlocked some stuff that I didn't even know was there.
Yeah.
And and just kind of help process it. And sometimes it's not even, you go into it and it maybe isn't even a trauma thing. It's just helping me to kind of like figure out something that I'm working on, and just get like a nice little reset. But other times it just you pull something out that's just filed away in the back there, and somehow you've managed to bury it deep enough that you forgot about it. So I am always interested in trying those new things. I'd definitely take you up on that offer.
Yeah, there's one of my fellow coaches. His name is Mark Meinke. He has the Operation Tango Romeo podcast, which is another trauma recovery podcast. He's a former he's in the Canadian military, and he's interviewed countless people and tried all the different modalities. And he said the 22-0 modality was the one that he swears by himself, and he's got tremendous experience in the space. So
Wow,
it works incredibly well, and so I couldn't recommend it enough.
nice. Yeah, it's good to know. So, as far as a little bit more about what you're doing right now, and you're into coaching. I mean, you're definitely pushing people. I mean, the name says it, do hard things, right? And you're pushing people to do hard things, and what all is that your coaching entails? What are you really after in that for your clients?
Yeah, so I'm a certified high performance coach. You know, on my journey of the positive aspect of psychology. You know, what I loved about therapy, I look at you got different time zones that we live in and operate in. So if you want to deal with therapy, you know, usually therapy is like going into the past. Like we're currently in the present moment, but you go into the past to unlock it so you can go from dysfunctional to functional. Well,
Mm,
as a high performance coach, what I do is I'm trying to take you as a functional person and get you to high performance. So basically, find your future best self and help you navigate that. And so, Brendan Bouchard is a best-selling author. He has a coaching program, and I certified back in right before the pandemic as a performance coach. And I look at as a certified high performance coach, there are 6 pillars of high performance: energy, so how you manage your body. That's diet, exercise. How do you manage stress? It's having the physical vitality to get through the day, so you not only, I mean, because when you not only feel good but be productive.
mm,
And so it's managing this vessel that you have. It's influence. It's as a leader, you need to be able to influence. You need to influence those to participate in your vision, to support you, to buy from you. You need to influence your kids. It's being productive. It's doing the work that truly matters versus the busy work.
mm,
It's having clarity, like knowing who you are, like what is your vision and your purpose statement, and how are you staying on that path. Um, it's I'm missing one. Oh, it's courage. It's being able to face fear. There's physical fear. There's fear of judgment. There's fear of pain, and we'll do a lot to avoid pain. And so, how do you look at fear, and how do you overcome fear? And so, those are the pillars of performance that I help walk people through. And I look at it as a leadership coach. You know, I primarily work with small business owners and entrepreneurs. I'm in the real estate realm as well. So those are most of my clients. But I do group coaching and one-on-one coaching, and I basically help them find their best version and help them achieve their goals quickly. And if they have trauma, I can definitely help them with that. Or if they need some other type of therapy, hey, go find a therapist. But that's really what I do. I'm a high performance development director for an organization called the Lions Guide, which is it's 3 veterans, and we're very much like kind of like what Jocko does with Echelon Front, but we're a new startup, and we got Dale, who's a former business owner, a Marine vet, and then we've got Flip, who's a Navy veteran, and we got a couple different leadership programs. So those are some of the things that, as far as the coaching realm, what we do.
nice, nice. And I think that's all like the coaching end of things, and like being coached and being able to be coached. To me, it was a natural transition from therapy to coaching because I had already set myself on a course of healing and growth. And at that point, it was just like, okay, well, what next? And so while I still have like reoccurring treatments because of the ketamine protocols and things like that, I still very much the coaching thing appealed to me because I was like, okay, well, what else can I fix? If I can come out of this dark space and fix so much, what else can I fix? What else can I improve? What else can I do? And it just really, it does all those things set the tone for the way that you schedule out your day, your week, your month, your quarters, your years, and gives you greater focus, which I think a big part of that greater focus helps you to better manage stress if you already have the tools to manage stress on a basic level. And so you're just further developing that tool as you develop other tools. And
Absolutely.
maybe that's that you're a first responder, but you don't want to do that anymore. So you need to figure out what you're going to do. So what's the transition there? Where are you going to go next? Or maybe just through the course of, being in a dark space, you've really let your body go. Because I mean, let's face it, if you're depressed, if you're in a bad place, if you get out of bed in the morning, you feel like that was an accomplishment. So working out isn't always in the cards, even though they recommend, like, get some good physical activity, get the endorphins going. It's hard. So maybe that is a component of why you do it, or something that you want to build, or just to develop new relationships. Because I don't know about you, but like I burned a lot of mine to the ground when I was struggling. And
Yeah.
and it happens. And like, I've been able to repair some of them not. But whatever it is, there's just opportunity to continue that growth, where like that therapy, the counseling, any of these other things really really work on like getting your mental space in that space where you're okay, and you're happy, or you're not depressed anymore. But beyond that, as you continue that growth path, if you choose to, it really pushes you to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I've certainly burned some of my relationships to the ground. I mean, it led to a divorce, right?
Exactly. Yeah, me too.
And you gotta handle those things. And to your point, when you're in these groups and you're getting coached, like it's a good transition. And what I like about the positive psychology is that I feel better after, I'm more motivated and more inspired from one of those sessions. And therapy is hard work,
Yeah.
but I've walked out of those like feeling like, man, that was tough. But a good coaching session usually has a lot of positivity and there's a lot of motivation, and you're around other inspiring people. So it's a different dynamic for sure. And I couldn't recommend it to people enough.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing, and I think it's important. And I think really, regardless of where you end up after the treatment, find something to continue that journey. That, maybe it's not like all these different aspects of growth or any of that. Maybe there's just something that you left behind in that darkness, something that was a passion of yours before all that happened, that you want to get to know again, get reacquainted with. And maybe it's fly fishing, maybe it's woodworking, who knows, whatever it is. But that opportunity for growth lies even within picking up that passion or that hobby that you left behind, that you used to do, that filled your soul, and made you feel whole, made you feel like it was your own personal reset button, that no matter how bad your day was, you could go out to the garage and do whatever.
Yeah.
And
I had worked with a client one time. She was a single mother, was in an abusive relationship. So she had a lot of trauma from an abusive relationship and done a lot of great work unpacking that, but she was still struggling in life. She was overweight and just like, man, who's gonna marry me? I'm overweight. I have all this baggage. I'm a single mom. So kind of really down on herself. And through the performance coaching, we help craft a vision statement, and it's like, let's take a positive look into the future. And who do you want to become? Like, this trauma is not going to define you. Who do you want to become? And one of the things I'm like, hey, what? She was just struggling to find any level of motivation. I'm like, well, what is something that you used to do that you really, really enjoyed? Well, she lived out in Utah around the Salt Lake area, and she's like, you know what? I love going up to the mountains and hiking. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I'm like, you can see him right out the window. I can see him right there. I'm like, cool.
yeah,
That's awesome. When was the last time you did that? 20 years ago. It was 20 years ago. And I'm like, that makes you happy. I can sit there and look at the mountains behind your screen. Why don't you just go up there this weekend? How long does it take to get there? Like 15 minutes. So she did it the very next weekend. And she was just like, oh my gosh, this was so amazing. I took my son up there and had a remarkable time and got her on the path of like being healthy and active again. But sometimes we just forget like how good life can be. the things that brought you joy as a child or in the earlier part of your life will usually bring you joy in the present. But
Yeah.
sometimes we just forget, and it's the little things like that, simple things like that, that can really bring a lot of joy and happiness and just ignite that spark again. And it was such a cool thing to see the excitement and hear the excitement for doing something as simple as that, and inspiring her and motivating her to get back after it again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. And it's so true. I mean, it's a lot of times it's just you got to get back up. You got to get back on that horse. You got to do whatever that is and
Yeah,
reignite that fire. And a lot of times we just see it as like it's a struggle because we convince ourselves that we don't have time or that there's something else standing in your way. We'll make up an excuse because it's been so long. And really
yeah,
we just need to embrace it and be like, oh well, I'm gonna make time to do it once. And a lot of times
yeah,
that's
yeah,
enough to just be like, no, I'm gonna make time to do it again.
yeah. Well, it goes back to belief. If you believe that you don't have time, well,
Yep.
then you're not going to make the effort to do it. Or if you believe that that was 20 years ago and I can never get back to that shape again, well, then it goes back to the belief that you have. And if you adopt a negative belief, it's going to affect your emotions about it. It's going to affect your actions, and then you're going to get the results associated with that. But
Yep.
if you can rewrite the script on that, and like my client I worked with, she believed, once again, she was like, you know what, I believe that I can go hiking again. Yeah, I'm overweight, but you know what, I can do this. And oh, by the way, this is good for my son, and I need to be an example. And she rewrote that belief and started going up there, and it changed her life. And it's something as simple as that, that can change someone's life.
Yeah, that's great. It's so true. And I would just encourage everybody to find that, whatever that is. It's
Yeah.
absolutely worth it. And you'll be thankful that you did.
And you have to experiment. You got to try new things. Something I just recently tried. I'm going to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, so BJJ, and I just started going. And I'm like, man, this is great. I kind of got bored with some of my other hobbies, but having that something new to do. And I'm like, man, I'm in my mid 40s. Maybe I can't keep up with these guys. It's a little intimidating going in there, and everyone's got, blue belts and purple belts. And but they've welcomed me with open arms, and I'm in there learning something new, and I'm excited about it. Right. So you've got to experiment and try new things.
Mhm.
I think we as humans need to do that. I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So Jay, where can people find you if they wanted to learn more about what you're doing and just reach out and talk to you? I know for me, like a lot of the people that reach out to me tend to be first responders, tend to be firefighters, EMTs, paramedics. Not always, but sometimes people want to talk to somebody who really understands them on the level that they are. And having been in the military, and I know there's people in the military that listen to this podcast. If people
Yeah.
wanted to reach out to you or just to find out more about you, want to follow you because they want to see more about your journey.
The easiest way to remember, I think, would be my website, which is dohardthingsnation.com, dohardthingsnation.com. On that website, we have apparel. The podcast is there. We have an upcoming event where I'm hosting a 9.11 mile memorial run in Ruck here in Missouri. We also have a virtual option. But if you go to dohardthingsnation.com, that's where you can connect with me, because it's got all my contact information. Or you can go to jtiegs.com, Tiegs. You can email me, j@jtiegs.com. And that's probably the easiest way. I'm on all socials, so I'm out there. So if anyone wants to connect, I would be more than happy to do so. And I guess my next mission, if you will, is to just really help people live a better life through leadership. And I'm working with small business owners because I think they're the lifeblood of our country. But I am passionate about helping first responders and our military veterans just thrive. I think there's such a void in leadership in our country, and I think it's the veterans, it's the sheepdogs that are best in the best position to take our skill and experiences and help. And whether that's lead a little league, baseball team, or get involved in your church, or maybe it's run for office. We can't be victims.
Mhm.
And I think that if you succumb to this trauma, you're letting yourself be a victim. And we need strong leaders, and you need to lead yourself out of it, and then find your next mission by serving others. So
Absolutely. And I think that's huge too, that if we let ourselves succumb, we're just giving up. And
Mhm.
virtually everybody, I mean not virtually everybody, you got to where you are in life because you hadn't given up, or you already wouldn't be here. So why give up now? Because often when it's the darkest, seems the hardest, you're right on the edge of just overcoming or seeing that light. It's like
Yeah.
the hardest climb on a mountain is the last step. I mean, you've been climbing all that time, and it's just that last one to get up to the top. So, yeah, I think it's great what you're doing. I appreciate everything that you do and your service to the country, and it's just a wonderful thing that you want to give back. And um, I'm going to leave the final thought with you. What would you say to the person who may be listening right now that is in that dark space, that wants to give up and quit, that isn't sure where to turn or what they can do to overcome the darkness?
Yeah, don't tap out. Like you've got so much left in you, and there's people around you that care about you. I just recently saw a Marine, a former Marine, take his life, and on social media he had his like just final message, and the outpour. I mean, he took his life. He ended it. Left behind like two kids and a wife, and the whole community. You could just see how that individual made such an impact and was suffering in silence, but it made such an impact. Like if he would have just spoken up and asked for help, if maybe I could have got my hands on him and had, just got on a call with him for 60 to 90 minutes, did the TRP session, who knows what the outcome could be. Just don't surrender. You're loved, you're needed, you're not alone. Suffering is part of the human dynamic, and lean in. Don't tap out, don't surrender to it, and just do the hard thing, right? Do the hard thing, and lead yourself out of this. And that's my best advice, is don't give up, and you're not alone.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I appreciate it. Uh, Jay, thank you again so much for coming on. I really appreciate you and what you're doing. And everybody listening, thanks for tuning in this week. And be sure to share this with somebody who could benefit from the message. Let's connect. Let's talk. If there's a specific topic that you want to talk about, let's do it. Be sure to like and follow the podcast so it gets it up higher in the searches so we can help more people and do more for everybody. And we'll catch you guys next week on another episode of Freeing Your Mind podcast. Love you guys. God bless.